Will Elon Musk really die on Mars? It sounds like the kind of question the internet was made to laugh at, until you realise he's completely serious. Tonight, we asked an AI to calculate the odds. Not a prophecy, not clickbait. Real math, built on physics, biology, and just the right amount of madness. By the end of this story, you'll know exactly what the numbers say. But before we reveal those odds, we have to understand what we're really calculating. Because behind that question hides an entire equation of human ambition. The man, the machines, the risks, and the dream that refuses to stay grounded. So, in the next few chapters, we'll break it all down. We'll go back to the early failures that turned him into a believer, study the technology designed to cheat gravity, examine the hostile planet waiting to kill him, and finally, let the AI decide his fate. Only then will we know if Elon Musk's prophecy ends in triumph, tragedy, or just statistics. It all began with a single line Musk tossed into the void like a cosmic punchline. "I'd like to die on Mars, just not on impact." At first, everyone chuckled. Classic Musk, a mix of bravado, irony, and possible sleep deprivation. But then he said it again, and again, and suddenly it didn't sound like a joke anymore. He wasn't being poetic, he meant it. He actually wants to end his life on another planet. Not symbolically, not spiritually, literally. Think about that for a second. Most people spend their lives trying not to die. Musk has turned dying into a startup. When you've already built PayPal, Tesla, and rockets that land themselves, what's left? Apparently, your own tombstone on Mars. Most billionaires buy islands. Musk's version of real estate is a hemisphere of frozen CO2 and dust storms. Psychologists might call it a fear of irrelevance, the same ancient impulse that built pyramids and wrote epic poems, but with a Wi-Fi connection. For Musk, immortality isn't about living forever, it's about leaving forever. It's about control, of death, of destiny, of the narrative itself. If he has to die, he wants to die on his terms, under a sky he personally colonized. It's a kind of God complex, sure, but an oddly relatable one. Because who hasn't dreamed at least once of leaving this chaotic planet behind and starting fresh somewhere quiet? Preferably without traffic, taxes, or Twitter. So we decided to test the dream. What happens when you strip away the myth and feed the numbers into a machine that doesn't care about ambition or charisma? We gathered everything. Mission data, radiation exposure models, astronaut medical records, funding projections, and we handed it all to an algorithm. This one. We didn't ask for opinions, we asked for math. How old will he be when the first crew leaves? How many successful Starship flights does it take before someone dares to risk their life inside one? How much radiation can a 70-year-old body take before it gives up? Every parameter, every risk, every variable fed into a machine that doesn't laugh, doesn't dream, doesn't tweet. And as it started running simulations, something strange happened. The absurd began to look plausible. Because that's what science does best. It turns madness into spreadsheets. And somewhere between physics and psychology, the question stopped being ridiculous. It became human. Maybe the line between genius and delusion is just the altitude where oxygen starts to run out. Still, it's hard not to smile at the irony. A billionaire trying to domesticate the cosmos. The ultimate midlife crisis. Instead of buying a sports car, he builds a planet. It's as if humanity collectively decided, sure, we could fix Earth. But have you seen Mars? It's got aesthetic. But behind the laughter hides something bigger, Musk isn't just talking about his death. He's talking about ours. The idea that humanity's future depends on leaving the cradle before we burn it down. Whether you admire him or can't stand him, there's something undeniably hypnotic about that mission. To die somewhere that proves we once dared to live elsewhere. Before we go further, quick favour, subscribe. It won't get you a ticket to Mars, but it might save you from dying of boredom on Earth. This is Crazy Science Stories, where science gets weird, facts get fun, and billionaires try to outsmart mortality. We turn real experiments into cinematic adventures, with a touch of humour and a dash of existential panic. Trust me, Wi-Fi on Mars will be terrible. So before an algorithm can predict how Elon Musk dies, it has to understand why he's obsessed with dying up there in the first place. To find the answer, we have to go back to where it all started, when rockets were exploding, investors were panicking, and one man decided gravity was optional. Every religion begins with fire. Elon Musk's started with explosions. In 2008, SpaceX was collapsing under its own ambition. 3 rockets had already died on the launch pad, and the 4th was about to determine the company's fate. Engineers were sleeping under their desks. Musk was weeks away from bankruptcy, and NASA was quietly preparing the eulogy. Then, against all logic and all probability, the 4th rocket reached orbit. The control room erupted. Musk didn't just save his company, he created a legend. In that instant, SpaceX became more than a business. It became a belief system. The message was simple. Failure is holy, fire is proof, and gravity can be negotiated. From that day on, Musk stopped talking like a CEO and started preaching like a prophet. Making life multiplanetary became his gospel, and rockets were his apostles. The faithful gathered, engineers, investors, dreamers, all convinced they were building the next chapter of human evolution. One launch at a time, SpaceX replaced despair with ritual. Each countdown was a prayer. Each landing, a resurrection. The AI looked at this history and noticed something interesting. Every successful landing increased the odds, fraction by fraction, that this story might end on Mars. Statistically, it was insignificant. Symbolically, it was everything. Because what the data shows in decimals, faith translates into momentum. Reusable rockets didn't just change space travel, they rewrote its economics. The cost of sending a kilogram into orbit dropped by 95%. What once required governments and decades could now be done by a company and a caffeine budget. Space became a marketplace, and Musk became its messiah. Even skeptics started watching the live streams. The same people who mocked him began cheering when boosters touched down like synchronized dancers returning from war. He built more than machines. He built myth. SpaceX turned science into theatre, smoke, fire, and redemption. Fans wore merch that read, "Occupy Mars." Kids drew Falcon 9s in their notebooks. A whole generation decided that leaving Earth wasn't just possible, it was necessary. And Musk somehow became the face of destiny. The irony is that even his failures fueled devotion. Each explosion was shared, memed, dissected, and then forgiven. Failure is progress, he'd say, and people believed him. It was rocket science turned into self-help. SpaceX built such a loyal fan base, they'd probably buy tickets to the sun, one way. But behind the memes and the miracles, the pattern was clear. Musk wasn't just chasing success. He was trying to prove that persistence could rewrite physics. And maybe, Somewhere in that logic, there's a glimpse of the man himself. Terrified of stillness, allergic to limits, addicted to ascent. The AI, still crunching numbers, labels this period the ignition phase. It's the part of the curve where probability stops being theoretical and starts burning fuel. The moment when obsession transforms into momentum. But rockets that come home are one thing. The next one he built isn't supposed to come home at all. Next, the ship designed to make history, or headlines, Starship. They call it Starship, a name so humble it might as well be Noah's rocket. 120 meters of stainless steel ambition, built not just to fly, but to leave. It gleams under the Texas sun like a bullet pointed at destiny. Where other rockets were designed to kiss space and come back, Starship is built to say goodbye. Its purpose is almost absurd in scope. Carry 100 tons of cargo, 100 people, refuel in orbit, and travel more than 50 million miles through radiation, vacuum, and the sheer indifference of physics. It's not a ship. It's a declaration, a promise that humanity will not end where it began. Inside the AI's analysis, this phase is labelled the critical mortality window. Translation, the part of the plan where the human body quietly files for divorce. 7 months in deep space, constant radiation equivalent to 10 CT scans a day. No gravity, no rescue, no turning back. On Mars, there are no emergency landings, no second chances, no Houston. Only silence and the math. The AI doesn't sugarcoat it. The data on long-term space exposure is grim. Muscles decay, bones dissolve, hearts weaken. The risk of cancer doubles. And that's before you factor in the stress of isolation, malfunction, or one badly timed solar flare. Musk calls it challenging. Scientists call it suicidal optimism. But that's always been the rhythm of his life, sprinting headfirst into the impossible and asking for instructions later. There's also the small issue of time. Musk was born in 1971. By 2040, when the first realistic crewed mission to Mars might launch, he'll be around 70 years old. The average astronaut age for long-duration missions is 45. Space medicine experts say the risk curve skyrockets after 60. But if you tell Musk he's too old, he'll probably build an AI to argue otherwise. He might be the first retiree to move into assisted living on another planet. Picture it: sunrise over Olympus Mons, breakfast in a helmet, and a small plaque outside his dome that reads, Elon Musk, resident number 1. Please knock before oxygen loss. For now, Starship is still in testing, which in SpaceX terms means spectacular explosions available in 4K. Each failure feels like an episode in an ongoing saga, destruction disguised as progress. To outsiders, it's chaos. To Musk, it's rehearsal. He sees fire where others see failure. It's the same religion, just with shinier rockets. But behind the myth and memes, the engineering is breathtaking. No one else has ever tried to make something this big, this powerful, this reusable. Every rivet, every launch, every fiery landing attempt is one more coin tossed into the slot machine of destiny. Somewhere between arrogance and genius, Starship represents humanity's most reckless confession. We're not done trying. The AI watches, running endless simulations, and notes the probability shifts slightly upward. Each test, each milestone, each successful landing nudges the Musk survives Mars transit number closer to plausible. Still terrifying, but no longer fantasy. Yet it also flags another column: human fragility. The longer the mission, the smaller the margin. Statistically speaking, ambition and biology have never been good roommates. But let's say he makes it through space alive. Let's say the launch works, the landing is gentle, and the world cheers as the first human footprints sink into red dust. That's when the real nightmare begins. Because surviving Mars isn't about arriving, it's about staying. Next, we'll dive into the madness of terraforming, and why even the AI raised an eyebrow. Step 1. Breathe. Step 2. Realize there's nothing to breathe. Mars isn't a planet, it's a dare. The air is 95% carbon dioxide, the pressure is 1% of Earth's, and the average temperature hovers around -60 degrees Celsius. There's no magnetic field to shield you, no ozone to block the radiation, and no atmosphere thick enough to scatter sunlight. It's beautiful in the same way a freezer is, until you try to live inside it. That hasn't stopped Elon Musk from treating it like a fixer-upper. His most infamous idea came in a tweet: nuke Mars. 2 words that sound like a supervillain's plan, but in his mind were a shortcut to paradise. The theory, half science, half stand-up routine, was that detonating nuclear bombs over the poles could vaporize the frozen CO2, thicken the atmosphere, and warm the planet. Scientists pointed out minor flaws in the plan, like fallout, radiation, and the slight possibility of violating every planetary protection treaty ever written. But details are for mortals. Musk deals in vision. NASA and MIT have suggested gentler options: orbiting mirrors to reflect sunlight, genetically engineered microbes that exhale oxygen, and even a magnetic shield placed between Mars and the Sun to stop the atmosphere from leaking away. Each proposal is clever, and each reads like a desperate love letter to physics. Please, just this once, ignore your own rules. The AI looks at the data and shakes its digital head. Colony survival probability by 2050, 40%. Translation: not impossible, just very, very optimistic. It lists the weak points: energy generation, radiation exposure, psychological stress, supply chain. Every problem spawns 3 more. The conclusion is simple: Mars doesn't want company. And yet, that's what makes it irresistible. Humanity has always tried to bend nature until it bends back. We drained swamps, split atoms, cloned sheep, and built cities where nothing should grow. Mars is just the next chapter in that long argument between hubris and gravity. We can't keep a salad alive on the International Space Station, but sure, let's fix an entire planet. Terraforming isn't science fiction anymore. It's the most expensive expression of hope ever conceived. If it fails, it will fail spectacularly, with style, and possibly fireworks visible from Earth. If it works, it will mean that life can spread beyond the planet that created it. A cosmic version of moving out of your parents' house and immediately realizing how much rent costs. The AI calls it the paradox of persistence. The longer we survive, the riskier our dreams become. Musk doesn't just want to escape death. He wants to redesign the conditions under which it happens. He's not content to rest in peace. He wants to rest in progress. But while Musk dreams of red sunsets, another kind of race is already unfolding. One fought with rockets, egos, and billions. Next, we'll see who else wants to claim the red sky, and what that competition might mean for humanity's odds. Space used to be about flags. Now it's about logos. Once upon a time, nations fought for the right to plant a piece of cloth on the moon. Now billionaires fight for trademarks in orbit. Mars has become the ultimate vanity project, the next frontier in a war of ambition fought with stainless steel, stock prices and hashtags. Jeff Bezos wants orbital colonies circling Earth, elegant space condos with perfect lighting and zero gravity tax havens. China has declared its goal to send taikonauts to Mars by the 2040s, with a timeline so precise it sounds like an IKEA manual for destiny. NASA, more cautious but equally determined, has bet everything on the Artemis program. Back to the moon first, then onward to Mars by the mid-2040s. Even the UAE, once better known for skyscrapers than spacesuits, has announced plans for a Martian settlement called City of Hope. It's the new global arms race, except the weapons are rockets and the battlefield is the sky. To the AI, the pattern is obvious. Prestige, patents, propaganda. Each actor is chasing something slightly different. For NASA, it's legacy. For China, dominance. For Bezos, continuity of civilization and a decent view from orbit. For Musk, it's immortality. The AI noticed something humans often miss. The faster the competition, the higher the accident risk. History agrees. The original space race nearly cost dozens of lives before Neil Armstrong ever took a step. Now we're doing it again, but with Wi-Fi and billion-dollar egos. The humour is almost cosmic. It's capitalism's most expensive midlife crisis. The richest men on Earth trying to prove they're not bound by it, turning existential dread into a business model. While the rest of us argue about mortgages, they're arguing about Martian citizenship. It's hard not to admire the audacity. It's also hard not to laugh. According to the AI's current projection, if politics, funding and physics behave, NASA might land a human crew between 2040 and 2045. SpaceX, ever the optimist, still points to 2039. A date as bold as it is unlikely. The difference between the two timelines is more than years. It's a philosophy. NASA plays chess. Musk plays poker with rocket fuel. And yet, under all the noise and branding, there's a deeper tension pulsing through the data. Humanity is trying to leave Earth before fixing it. It's the ultimate act of denial, an evacuation plan disguised as progress. When Musk talks about making life multiplanetary, it sounds noble. But sometimes it feels like he's building a lifeboat for a ship we haven't finished sinking. The AI doesn't judge. It just calculates. But even it admits quietly that ambition isn't measurable in equations. It's chaos disguised as purpose. And that chaos, messy, dangerous, beautiful, is what drives us forward. Maybe that's why we keep looking up. Maybe that's why, even when the odds are ridiculous, we still play. And now comes the moment of truth. We've seen the dream, the tech, and the madness. Now it's time for the math. Let's ask the only entity that never sleeps, never blinks, and once tried to date Siri, ChatGPT. So after 5 chapters of fire, steel, and faith, it's time to let the machine decide. We asked ChatGPT, yes, this very AI, one question. What are the chances that Elon Musk will die on Mars? And here's what it said. Based on mission data, human aging curves, radiation exposure, and current technological progress, the probability that Elon Musk will personally set foot on Mars is approximately 20%. The probability that he will die there, naturally or otherwise, is about 7%. In other words, roughly 1 chance in 14 that this story ends where the sky is red. Those two numbers aren't separate, they describe different endings of the same dream. The 20% covers every possible arrival. The triumphant landing, the crash landing, or the short, fragile mission that history will still call a success. The 7% is narrower, more human. It's the version where he actually lives there for a while, breathes recycled air, builds his domes, watches the sun rise over Olympus Mons, and truly finishes his life beneath that red horizon. Because let's be honest, if he ever goes, he's not coming back. The distance, the radiation, the logistics, everything about Mars makes it a one-way trip. There will be no rescue missions, no second chances. Unless, of course, he becomes immortal by then, which, given Musk's track record, isn't entirely off the table. So in the logic of the machine, 1 future in 5 gets him to Mars, but only 1 in 14 lets him stay. The rest fall in the brutal middle ground, the futures where he makes it but doesn't last, where the dream touches down just long enough to fade. 7%. That's the number. Small, improbable, but not impossible. 1 in 14. It sounds like a bar bet until you put it next to the physics. A Mars transfer is a 7-month radiation bath. NASA's RAD instrument measured dose rates that add up to roughly 2/3 of a sievert for the transit alone, before counting months or years on the surface. Long-term exposure pushes right up against career limits for astronauts. That is the math beneath the drama. Now stack that against the machine Musk is building to roll these dice. Starship is not a metaphor. It is a 120-meter stainless steel elevator to interplanetary space, designed for orbital refueling and 100-ton payloads. The first hardware that even pretends to make a Mars city economically thinkable. If it hits airline-like cadence, those 20% odds creep upward. If it stalls, they decay. But let's widen the lens. What do humans think the odds are? When pollsters asked Americans whether NASA will put people on Mars by 2040, a majority, 56%, said it's very or somewhat likely, up from 49% a year earlier. Optimism is trending, even if experts keep clutching the spreadsheets. On a different question, would you want to live on Mars long term? Most people say no. Interest is a minority pursuit. We cheer the flag. We hesitate to move into the flagpole. And the planet itself. The romance crashes into geology. NASA's own synthesis is brutal. There isn't enough easily accessible carbon dioxide on Mars to warm it into a shirt-sleeve world with today's tools. You can wave mirrors at the sun or dream up artificial magnetospheres. Real ideas, seriously discussed. But none of that makes a breathable Tuesday next decade. Terraforming is a century-scale verb, not a product roadmap. Those 7% survive because the vision faces physics that won't blink. So why not higher than 7? Because the critical mortality window isn't the landing, it's the long, slow biology. 7 months of microgravity strips muscle and bone. Deep space radiation quietly accumulates like interest. Medical evacuation is measured in orbits, not hours. Add a human variable called time. Musk, born in 1971, will be around 70 if a first credible crewed window slides to the early to mid-2040s. Ambition ages. Physics does not. His famous promise, "I'd like to die on Mars, just not on impact," was a real line, not a meme. The intent has been consistent for a decade. And why not lower than 7? Because the program logic keeps sharpening. If Starship nails reusability and orbital refueling, the price per kilogram to orbit drops again. Flights multiply, risk knowledge compounds, and a pathway opens from spectacular to routine. Even a cautious timeline has NASA aiming humans at Mars in the 2040s, with SpaceX talking sooner in its most optimistic scenarios. The more shots on goal, the less absurd the idea that one of them includes the most famous passenger in aerospace. Now for the twist you asked for. After all our computations, ChatGPT gives him about a 7% chance of reaching Mars and actually finishing his days there. Then we ask Grok, Musk's own AI, built by XAI, expecting a little bias. Instead, it went full existential. Grok's verdict? Less than 1%. Even the machine coded in his image doesn't believe he'll make it. Its logic was brutal. The distance, the radiation, the biology, the odds of a 70-year-old man surviving a one-way trip to a frozen desert. All of it collapses into a decimal. If everything goes perfectly, flawless Starship flights, safe landings, no medical disasters, maybe that number climbs to 5%. But right now, Mars remains a graveyard for robots, not for men. So, for once, the fanboy AI and the realist one agree on something. Elon Musk probably won't die on Mars. He'll die trying to get there. And yet, for all the cold precision of the algorithms, something in their pessimism still feels human. Maybe because the numbers don't kill the dream. They just define the odds against it. Place those machine odds next to the human pulse, and you get a strange harmony. People believe a crewed Mars landing by 2040 is plausible. Experts grumble about life support and radiation. The hardware keeps exploding more precisely, and the planet sits there, cold and patient. The numbers wobble with every test flight, every budget cycle, every solar storm. Still, the curve points somewhere. It doesn't promise a city, it whispers a landing. And because this is crazy science stories, we owe you one last reckoning before the poetry. What would move the 7%? Upward. A string of flawless Starship cargo flights, reliable on-orbit refueling, a lunar surface demo of closed-loop life support, and a credible radiation shielding architecture. Regolith berms or water jackets that actually pencil out. Downward. A fatal early crewed failure, a regulatory freeze after a high-profile mishap, a negative medical ruling on deep space mission profiles for septuagenarians, or a budget winter that slows cadence and drains morale. The dice are not fair. They can be loaded by engineering. Maybe the odds don't matter. Maybe the point isn't whether he dies there, but whether we dare to keep betting on impossible dreams. Because beneath the spectacle sits a quieter thesis. Dying on Mars isn't about death. It's about proving life can spread. That audacity is the only renewable resource our species has never exhausted. Picture it. The first Martian dawn. 2 moons suspended over a horizon of rust. A small plaque half buried in the dust reads, "Here lies a human who refused to stay on one planet." Somewhere in the thin light, a city hums behind armoured glass. Not out of comfort, but out of refusal. So, will Elon Musk really die on Mars? Or will humanity die trying to follow him? Tell us in the comments. Destiny, delusion, or both? See you soon for another crazy science story, where the facts are real and the science is just insane enough to believe.